How are you guys doing? Today is Tuesday, January 4th, 2022. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to do an elite individual profile on Toni Kroos. The elite German midfielder for Real Madrid turns 32 today, and my intention with this is, of course, to look in and see what he's been able to do on a micro level, as looking at his impact game in and game out. And I'm also going to zoom out and take a look at what his impact has been on his teams and on the nations that he's played for, and all the individual accolades that he's been able to collect at being one of the best midfielders in the world. If you're not familiar with Toni Kroos, he's about a 6-foot midfielder. He's probably one of the most well-rounded soccer players you'll ever find. In the midfield, of course, he can definitely defend and he can definitely shoot, but I think his biggest skill is definitely his passing and just his intelligence and just having a good sense for who's on the field at the same time. I do think that his intellect is definitely underrated when it comes to analyzing how that makes him such a phenomenal midfielder at what he does. And the best thing about him is that when he goes to teams, you can see the instant impact that he brings teams by the fact that teams literally win the longer that he's on the field. So just to get into the background, he was originally born in what was then East Germany in 1990, right before the wall came down. He would eventually find his way going through the youth organizations until he found his way starting for Bayern Munich for the very first time as a 17-year-old teenager. In his very first season in 2007-2008 as a 17-year-old, Toni Kroos would go on to start 3 of the 12 matches he played for a Bayern Munich squad that would go on to win the Bundesliga. At the same time, they were able to win the DFB Pokal. That was the season where Toni was the team's leading goal scorer for the very first time. Looking specifically at the season itself, he wasn't able to really add any goals or any assists, but at the same time, his impact was most definitely felt, and Bayern Munich was able to go on and pick up a very big win. But considering he was sharing the midfield with Bastian Schweinsteiger and the other established German midfielders who were in their primes at their time, he, of course, would fight for playing time as a younger player. But, of course, being that young and getting that much exposure was definitely probably the hint. Going into his second season at Bayern in his age 18 season in 2008-2009, he would go on to start 2 of the 7 matches he played for a Bayern Munich side that, of course, would go on to finish runners-up in the Bundesliga. They did not take home a single trophy this year. But considering the 7 games he played, Bayern still wanted to keep them in there. They still wanted to keep control over him. But at the same time, they wanted to allow him to get some games under his belt so he can establish some expertise, at least some experience. And in his 3rd season, at least at the senior level, he will go on to play his age 18 season with Bayer Leverkusen. And in 2008-2009, he would start 6 of the 10 games he played in a season where Leverkusen would finish with the 9th best record in the Bundesliga. However, they would make it all the way to the DFB Pokal, where they would end up losing in the final. In his 3rd season, at least playing for the team, he would go on to finish with 1 goal and an assist in the games that he would go on to play with the team. As Bayer Leverkusen, he wouldn't really play for them in the Pokal. He would really get his matches in the Bundesliga, and he would start to really get a sense of the players around him as he was playing as a teenager still amongst players that were almost a full decade over them at the average. Following that season, he would come back for his 2nd season on loan at Bayer Leverkusen, and in his age 19 season in 2009-2010, he would go on to start 26 of the 33 games in a season where Bayer Leverkusen would finish with the 4th best record in the Bundesliga after finishing 9th the year before. Toni Kroos would actually play a full season for the very first time in his life, as in that season he would finish with 9 goals and 8 assists. His 9 goals are the most that he's ever put up in a Bundesliga season, and his 8 assists are tied for the 2nd most he was ever able to put up in a Bundesliga season, and that includes Bayern Munich. At the conclusion of the season, he would not have any trophies with Bayer Leverkusen, while at the same time, Bayern went on to win the Champions League. They went on to win the Bundesliga in that year, where Toni Kroos helped Leverkusen finished fourth. But following his 2 years on loan, Bayern Munich felt as though he was ready to come back after he had competed in 4 matches with the German national team in the FIFA World Cup in 2010, where Germany would go all the way to they would finish third place in the South African World Cup tournament, and he was also playing there with Thomas Muller and Manuel Neuer for the first time to get a sense of who he's been on the team with that long. And he would go on following that stint with Germany in the World Cup. He would go on to return to Bayern Munich as he was taken off loan, and in his 5th season under Bayern control, but in his 3rd season there, in his age 20 season, he would start 19 of the 27 games he played in a season where Bayern Munich would go on to finish 3rd in the Bundesliga after they had finished as winners and champs the year before. They would go all the way to the semifinals of the DFB Pokal before they ended up losing that tournament. They lost in the round of 16 in Champions League. But of course, in Toni Kroos' first season, especially in the Bundesliga season itself, he added a goal and 3 assists for Bayern Munich. When he played in the 7 matchups he played in 7 Champions League matchups, and he also scored a goal in one of the 3 DFB Pokal matches, as Bayern was unable to pick up a title, especially this season. But of course, he would return for his 2nd season, where Bayern Munich would finish runners-up in almost every tournament they played in. Going into his 2nd season back with Bayern in his age 21 season in 2011-2012, he would start 27 of the 31 matchups he played for a Bayern Munich team that would go all the way to finish 2nd they would finish as runners-up in the Bundesliga. That was the last time that Bayern Munich had not won the Bundesliga in 2011-2012. Especially within that season, Toni Kroos would finish with 4 goals and 9 assists. His 9 assists he had 10 assists in the Bundesliga. His 10 assists in the Bundesliga are the most that he's ever been able to put together in a Bundesliga season. Add on to the fact that in the DFB Pokal, they went all the way to the finals where they would end up losing that year. But looking at how he fared, he still was able to add a goal in the 6 matchups he played. Bayern Munich would play 14 Champions League matchups for a Bayern Munich team that went all the way to the final and ended up losing on penalty kicks to Chelsea. But in that Champions League tournament, in the 14 games he played, he finished with 2 goals and 5 assists. As at the midfield position, he was a very integral part and a very integral reason to why Bayern Munich was competing at the way that they were competing. Following that season, he would go on to compete with Germany at the 2012 Euros. And in the 2012 Euros, Germany would go on to win their group stage by winning all of their matchups versus Portugal, the Netherlands, and then Denmark. Once they made it to the knockout stage in the in the quarterfinals, Germany would end up beating Greece 4-2, and then they would end up losing 2-1 in the semifinals as Balotelli ended up scoring 2 goals there. That's how their 2012 Euro stint would end. Following that year, he would come back to Bayern for his 3rd season back. And in his age 22 season in 2012-2013, he would start 23 of the 24 Bundesliga matches he played, in a season where Bayern Munich would go on to win the Bundesliga. Specifically in the Bundesliga itself, he would go on to finish with 6 goals and 8 assists. He would have as many scoring opportunities as he would, or scoring plays that he was responsible for with goals and assists as he did the previous year. And he did this in 7 less games played. Not to mention that he would go on to play 3 games in a DFB Pokal stint in which Bayern Munich would go on to win the double, at least within Germany. And then he would go on to he would play 9 games in a Champions League run. That would see Bayern Munich go all the way to the end where they would end up beating Borussia Dortmund in the final in Wembley Stadium. So that would be so he was a part of the Bayern Munich treble team in 2012-2013. And he was the center midfielder, and he played in a great chunk of those games considering how strong of a team Bayern Munich was. And following his 3rd season back, of course, he would return for his 4th and final season in the Bundesliga. In his age 23 season in 2013-14, after the treble season, he would go on to start 24 of the 29 matches he played in a season where Bayern Munich would repeat as champions or as winners of the Bundesliga. And of course, to continue, or just to give you a little bit of context as how Bayern Munich fared after that. They've won the Champions League ever since. They are currently on a 9-season streak, as this year would be their 10th in a row, but Toni Kroos was the center midfielder for the first two. Looking at how he fared in his final Bundesliga season, he would go on to finish with 2 goals and 4 assists, specifically in the Bundesliga. In the Pokal, he would finish with a goal and 2 assists in a season where Bayern Munich would repeat as double winners. So, of course, they would have that down. And once they went all the way to the Champions League final in 2013, or they would go all the way to the semifinals in 2013-14 before they would find themselves losing in that tournament to Real Madrid. They would end up losing 5-0 on aggregate this year, specifically in the tournament. And this year, Real Madrid would go on to win Champions League that season. But Toni Kroos was still able to win 2 trophies with Bayern Munich over that season. And then going into that summer, he would go to compete with Germany at the World Cup. And if you know your World Cup history, Germany went on to win the 2014 World Cup in Brazil. And of course, taking a look at how that run went, they of course would go on to make it through their group stage. Once they made it past their group stage, in the round of 16 matchup, they would go on to beat Algeria in extra time 2-1, thanks to a goal, as they scored both of their goals in extra time. Once they made it to the quarterfinals, they would beat France 1-0 off of a Mats Hummels goal. In the semifinals, Germany would end up beating Brazil 7-1 as Toni Kroos scored the 3rd and 4th goals of that matchup against the hometown Brazilian team. And then they would go all the way to the final, where Mario Götze's 113th minute goal would slide them past Argentina to go on to win the title. When it came down to the very end, Toni Kroos was named obviously to the team of the tournament, as he finished with 2 goals and he had 3 assists. And not to mention that 1 summer removed from the treble, he would go on to win the World Cup, which is the most coveted title in all of soccer, considering you can't really switch your national team. And like I said, he was the player that was at the very center of it, and considering he was one of the best players in the world at the time, should of course show what type of a player that he was as he was starting to enter his prime right before he left Bayern Munich. Following that 2014 World Cup, where he ascended to World Cup winner status, he would decide to, Real Madrid would end up buying him from Bayern Munich. And the moment that he was bought from Real Madrid, when he was bought by Real Madrid, he's been the midfielder there virtually ever since. And looking at his first season in Real Madrid and his age 24 season in 2014-15, his very first year in Real Madrid would go on to be his age 24 season in 2014-15. He would start all 36 of the La Liga matchups he played in a season where Real Madrid would go on to finish as runners-up, I believe, to Barcelona. But specifically in La Liga, he would finish with 2 goals and 7 assists in his debut season, as they would get really close but no cigar. When it came to the Copa America, they would end up losing in the round of 16, but in that stretch, he would go on to play about 2 games there, and he would play 12 games in a Champions League run that would see Real Madrid go on to lose in the Champions League semifinals that year. They went all the way as they lost to Juventus. Juventus went on to lose to Barcelona in the next round, as they were trying to repeat from the year before, as they had won the year Toni Kroos had gotten there. In those 12 games he played, he was able to finish with 3 assists as well from the midfield position, which is incredibly tough to do. But of course, following that first year at Real Madrid, in which he wasn't able to win anything with the club, except for, or I guess he was able to help the team win the Super Club. The team did win the Super Cup and the FIFA Club World Cup. But this would transition into his second season being there. And in Toni Kroos' age 25 season in 2015-16, specifically in La Liga, he would start all 32 of the matchups he played in a season where Real Madrid would finish runners-up again. As we transition into what he was doing statistically, he added 1 goal and 10 assists. His 10 assists were the first time he was able to do so in a La Liga season specifically. In the Champions League, he would go on to compete in 12 matches as he finished with an assist, as Real Madrid would go all the way to the final, and this year they would go on to win. This year they would beat Atletico Madrid on penalty kicks in the final, as they would take home this second title in 3 years, as Toni Kroos was there for those. And then following this 2015-16 season, he would go to compete with Germany at the Euros. He would play 6 matchups in a stint that saw Germany go all the way to the semifinals, where they would lose 2-0 to France. In that tournament, Toni Kroos would add one assist in those 6 matchups total, as Germany would get close but no cigar. That would be the second to last time he competed at the Euros. Following the 2016 Euros, he would come back to Real Madrid for his 3rd season there. In his age 26 season in 2016-17, Toni Kroos would start 28 of the 29 La Liga matchups he played, in a season where Real Madrid would go on to win La Liga for the very first time since he had been there. However, in the Copa España, they would go on to lose in the quarterfinals that year. However, after winning the Super Cup and the FIFA Club World Cup, they would go on to win the Champions League for the 2nd year in a row and for the 3rd time in 4 years. This year, they would go on to beat Juventus, and that was actually the day that I graduated high school. But of course, that all really fits in together. As in the Champions League, he did add a goal and an assist. As in La Liga that year, he would add 3 goals and 12 assists. Those 12 assists would be the most assists that he would log in a season, as Real Madrid went on to win this title. And of course, not to mention that in the Copa del Rey, he also did add an assist within that season as well. Following his 3rd season with Real Madrid, he would return for his age 27 season in 2017-18. In his 4th season with this club, after having won Champions League 2 years in a row and having won La Liga for the very first time, he would go on to start 26 of the 27 La Liga matchups he played, in a season where Real Madrid would go on to be 3rd in La Liga, finishing behind Atletico and Barcelona. In the Copa del Rey, they would lose in the quarterfinals for the 2nd year in a row. However, this year they would go on to win the UEFA Super Cup, the Supercopa de España this year, as they went on to beat Barcelona in 2 legs. They would end up winning the FIFA Club World Cup as well. And at the end of the 2017-18 season, the trophy that they would pick up would be the Champions League for the 3rd year in a row. This year, they went all the way to the final, where they would beat Liverpool. Looking at how Toni Kroos fared in all these in the La Liga season, he finished with 5 goals and 7 assists. His 5 goals and 7 assists in La Liga were at that point were the most that he's ever scored in Spain in a domestic league. In the Copa del Rey, he did not play a single game, but he did play the 2 Supercopa de España games. In the Champions League, in their run to the final, he would go on to finish with 12 matches played, as he did add an assist as well. Following that 2017-18 season, after Real Madrid three-peated and saw Cristiano Ronaldo leave the club for Juventus, he would go on to compete with Germany in 2018, their first appearance after winning the World Cup the year before. Germany would end up losing in group stage. They finished at the very bottom of Group F. They lost their first matchup 1-0 to Mexico. They won their second matchup versus Sweden, as their 95th goal from Toni Kroos was one of the greatest goals that I've ever seen in my life. And in their last game, they would end up getting scored on twice in extra time by South Korea. South Korea ran away with a 2-0 win. In 2018, ended up seeing France going all the way to the World Cup final and winning. So that is the last time that Toni Kroos has played in a World Cup. And since he's retired from the international team, as though he may never play in a World Cup again, so that might be his last appearance. But following that early exit by Germany, that was probably the most embarrassing exit that it's seen in a while. He would come back to return for what would be his 5th season with Real Madrid, his age 28 season in 2018 and 2019. In that season, he would start 26 of the 28 La Liga matchups he played in, as Real Madrid finished 3rd in La Liga for the 2nd year in a row. This was the first year without Ronaldo, so of course they had a lot to learn there. They would go on to win the FIFA Club World Cup, but they finished as runners-up in the UEFA Super Cup, as they lost to Atletico Madrid. In the Copa del Rey, they would end up losing in the semifinals that year. This year, they ended up losing to Barcelona 4-1 on aggregate, so that's, of course, how they would get stopped there. And then once they made it to the Champions League, they would end up losing in the round of 16, as they were the team that fell short to Ajax, that made it all the way to the semifinals and lost to Tottenham. So that is how that season would go, but they still would come away with a trophy that year, being the FIFA Club World Cup. And looking at how Kroos fared in that season, the La Liga matchup, he had 4 assists. In the 28 La Liga matchups he played, he had 4 assists. In the Champions League run through the round of 16, he had a goal and 2 assists. Not much more on that stint. But he would come back, of course, for his 6th season with Real Madrid, and in his age 29 season in 2019-2020, he would start 31 of the 35 La Liga matchups in a season where Real Madrid would take La Liga for the second time in a 4-year stint, especially since he had been there. Within the 35 La Liga matchups he played, he was able to finish with 4 goals and 5 assists, being a part of 9 goals in that season. He would go on to play 2 Copa del Rey games in a season where Real Madrid would end up losing in the quarterfinals. He would go on to play 6 matches in a Champions League stint that would go on to see Real Madrid lose in the round of 16 for the 2nd year in a row. He would score a goal and an assist before Real Madrid would end up losing to Manchester City, who lost to Lyon the next round. So that's how their Champions League went. But of course, following that, in the midst of all that, they were able to win the Supercopa de España yet again with him there, as this year they did have to go on to the very end as they beat Atletico Madrid 4-1 on penalty kicks. That's how that finished. But following that 2019-2020 season, they had to delay the World Cup, or they had to delay the Euros, actually. I'm sorry. But they had to push it back another year, so before that, he would play yet another season with Real Madrid. In his 7th season with the team, in his age 30 season in 2020 and 2021, Toni Kroos would play 24 of the 28 La Liga matchups he played in a season where Real Madrid would finish runners-up to Atletico Madrid. That is the most recent season that he had finished. In La Liga itself, he finished with 3 goals and 10 assists. His 10 assists are tied for the second most that he's had in a La Liga season. And taking a look at what he was able to do in other tournaments, he played 1 game in a Copa del Rey tournament that saw Real Madrid lose in the round of 32. He would go on to help Spain compete in the Champions League. He played 12 games and added 2 assists in a run that would see Real Madrid go all the way to the Champions League semifinal. Once they made it to the semifinal, they would find themselves losing to Chelsea, who went on to win Champions League last year, as a matter of fact. And then, of course, following that season, this leads us to this current season that we're currently in the 2021-22 season, as we are at the dawn of the 2022 calendar year. We are officially halfway through, and Toni Kroos, as of right now, specifically in La Liga, has started all 13 of the matchups he's played for a Real Madrid team that is sitting pretty comfortably at the very top of La Liga. They sit 4 or 5 points clear of second place Sevilla, even though Real Madrid has played 1 more game than Sevilla. But of course, Toni Kroos has been a big part of the reason that they've been doing so well, as he has a goal and 3 assists tally to him as a midfielder. But that gives you a sense for his statistical output and the fact that his impacts can most definitely, or his presence can merely impact the game just by doing the little things right. And that's the thing about Toni Kroos. He's one of the more technical midfielders in the game, doesn't have that many glaring weaknesses, and he's just turned 32 today, and now he's entering his 30s. Considering he's playing alongside Luka Modric and players that have played well into their 30s, I do believe that this next few years should be very comfortable for Toni Kroos, considering he's already accomplished enough so far along the way. Thanks once again. I first want to thank the Pro Football Reference and the Transfer Marked Footy Stats websites, as well as the Wikipedia articles that gave me all the stats and the numbers and the figures that I needed in order to do this episode. I also want to thank everyone for listening to all 24 minutes of this episode. I really do hope all is well. If you get a chance to watch Toni Kroos, he wears number 8 for Real Madrid. And after the last Euro exit by Germany in 2021, where they ended up losing in the round of 16 knockout phase to England, Toni Kroos did announce his retirement from the German international team, at least for now. But for now, I think or for the rest of his career, it looks as though we're only going to see what he's going to do at a club level rather than country. But even looking back at seeing what he's done with his country, it's really an impressive feat. It's really rare when you come across a player that has multiple domestic league championships in different leagues. You find a player with Champions League wins for different teams, not to mention a World Cup, all while being one of the best midfielders in the world. I think that there aren't that many careers like Toni Kroos, and I think that Toni Kroos' career is one that should be enjoyed while he's still playing. Thanks for listening. I hope all is well. Once all of today's episodes and matchups are done, I will come back tomorrow on Wednesday, January 5th for another episode. So until then, thanks for listening. I hope all is well, and I'll catch you with another episode tomorrow. Peace out.